The listeners of the Browns Nation station can show their Browns Nation pride by going to brownsnationswag.com. The site has all the latest and best fan gear to represent your team. Again, that's brownsnationswag.com. Cue the music. It's time to start the show. Welcome to the Browns Nation station. I'm your host, Mark Bergin, joined today by my fellow brownsnation.com colleague, Steven Kubitza. And Steven, the Browns are 5-2. What a wild game. The Browns won 37-34 in round 2 of the Battle of Ohio, a win over the Cincinnati Bengals. What a game.
Yeah. It was weird because there was so many potential, storylines just to kick off the show. It seemed like maybe originally like we'd be slandering Baker Mayfield, but it turns out he looked as best as he's ever looked.
Yeah, can we put that argument to bed of putting Case Keenum in as the starting quarterback to supplant Baker Mayfield? I think he showed today why he needs to be the starter moving forward. And we can get right into this because 21 consecutive completions. I don't care if you're going up against a weak Bengals defense. He flipped the script in the second half, and he started out slow, and we can cherry pick stats of, we started out 0 of 5 in this game. And I understand from an offensive standpoint, your first 10, 15, 20 plays are generally scripted. And so it was concerning for this Browns team. But you look on the flip side of this, Case Keenum, 32 years old, on his sixth different NFL team in 9 seasons. I understand the connection that he's had with Kevin Stefanski in Minnesota, but you've got to see what you've got in Baker Mayfield, the team's former number 1 overall pick. And look, at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield outdueled Joe Burrow in this one. Mayfield, again, 21 consecutive completions in this one. He had 5 touchdown passes, including the game winner to Donovan Peoples-Jones late in the fourth quarter. And Steven, might I point this out as well? That last drive he led the Browns on, 1:06 left in the game with no timeouts. What an impressive comeback by the Browns and Baker Mayfield. And you can credit Mayfield for the Browns' comeback in this one. I want to put the Case Keenum argument to bed this afternoon. What say you?
Well, I'll be honest. I was at one point for the Keenum or putting Keenum in, but only if Baker's ribs were too painful for him to throw the ball. So I was saying like bench him, and had to clarify to people I was watching with. I said, no, if he can't throw a football, but like you said, he's got to be out there. I mean, it's his 3rd year. We're going to have to, not us, but the Browns are going to have to think about his 5th-year option. You can't just bench him and then, put Keenum in and put Baker in like Hugh Jackson would do in the past, like put Kevin Hogan in. It's just a disaster. So I'm all about keeping him in. And I also agree with you. I'm not much for the argument of, it was against the Bengals. It's like, well, I mean, the Ravens are beating up on the Bengals. Do we, take down Lamar Jackson's stats in those games? So, I mean, that last drive, like you said, I think that showed what he's capable of moving forward.
Let me piggyback off your point there, and I think that's a great caveat, is if Mayfield is healthy enough to go, and if he's completing 21 consecutive passes, a franchise record, so in the history of the Browns, I think he shows that physically he's okay and that he can do the job. Again, if he's physically compromised, okay, then you start Case Keenum. But I think that even adds to my argument of if Case Keenum were really that great, wouldn't you start him over Mayfield if his ability is in any way compromised? And they're not doing that. And you can see why. And look, I'm not going to defend Baker Mayfield to say, okay, he's played out of his mind. I think that the conversation needs to go to, and let's have a smarter conversation here, is that 5th-year option on his rookie deal. That's what we need. Those are the conversations we need to discuss, not necessarily of, we're getting absolutely whipped by the Ravens or the Steelers. Let's go see what our backup does and put in our backup quarterback almost as if you would with the 6th man in basketball. You might get that instant jolt, but again, there's a reason why Keenum's been a journeyman thus far in his NFL career. Mayfield was also without Wyatt Teller on the offensive line. Austin Hooper was out, which I think you saw early on in this game. Mayfield got things going with the rookie Harrison Bryant, but Mayfield was also missing Odell Beckham Jr. for the vast majority of this game. So those are three key contributors on the offense that he was without in this game. And look, I know it's easy to look on the flip side to see how impressive Joe Burrow is for the Bengals and all of the players that he is without on his offensive line and his starting running back in Joe Mixon. But you can't do that. I know it's so easy to do because you're going up against your AFC North opponent, but again, I'm going to defend Baker Mayfield here. And this reason, you saw today what it does if you actually develop stability. And the Browns have not had that at the quarterback position, at their head coaching position, and in the role of general manager. And the most successful franchises in this league have stability in those three roles. And that's the reason why you have to continue to start Mayfield. I'll entertain the discussion of whether or not to pick up his fifth-year rookie deal. That's the smarter conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with you, especially with Keenum. Like you said, if he was this great player, then, why is he holding a clipboard with a hat on every game? So, and looking at the box score again, just, it's almost like the Baker conversation. It's easy to get into kind of like a bubble if you're just going on Twitter and seeing the same people saying stuff. But, I mean, the Browns put up 37 points. Baker's only incompletion after his 0-for-5 start was a spike. And then the defense gave up 34 points. In the fourth quarter, I mean, the Browns outscored them 20-14. So focusing on Baker after this game, I mean, we're doing it to defend him, but focus, on him negatively, you're kind of ignoring the glaring problems for the team right now. So you say, oh, well, Baker, well, you could argue, well, he did this against the Bengals, defense, but look what our defense did against the one-win Bengals offense. So you're kind of ignoring the real issues just because it's such like a talking point, because it's almost like some Browns fans just can't be comfortable with like this, potential stability you're talking about. Like getting to that point, it doesn't just happen.
I'll move to the defensive side of the ball with you because other than Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, what do you really have? And Joe Burrow, who threw for more than 400 yards this afternoon, exposed that Browns secondary. And I know Andrew Sendejo is an easy target for a lot of the Browns fans. I know they started the petition to get rid of him, but there are a lot more problems on the back end. And again, other than Garrett and Denzel Ward, like who are those guys that you implicitly trust on this defense to make plays for you? And there's only so much that you can do. I'm worried about the offenses that can account for Myles Garrett in the sense that, okay, he's clearly a player that you game plan for in the sense that if he's in a one-on-one matchup, good luck to your quarterback. But if you chip him with the running back, tight end, what have you, and I know the Bengals did that this afternoon, you go up against better offenses and they game plan and take away Myles Garrett. What's your counter? If you're either going to double team him or chip him or everything, there's got to be someone else on this Browns defense that steps up and makes a play. And even at the very end there, it's just like, okay, Joe Burrow's been extremely impressive. There's no doubt about that. But he's still a rookie quarterback. And the Browns did not get that done today. Had the Browns lost this afternoon, it would have been on the defense, not Baker Mayfield. And my fear is that people that are Browns fans and in the media as well, you mentioned Twitter. I'm looking at this all afternoon of, okay, this would have hung on Baker Mayfield's shoulders. That's not the problem with this team right now.
No, you're exactly right. There's on defense, like everyone or Browns fans will try to make this argument like, oh, we need more out of Myles Garrett. It's like Myles Garrett's one of the most elite at his position in the entire NFL. He gets at least one forced turnover a game. Denzel Ward slapping the ball out of A.J. Green's hands. And then you switch over to Red Wine just putting his forearm into a receiver right by the end zone, not wrapping up. You have very few Olivier Vernon sightings, who I know he restructured his deal this year, but he's still getting paid a lot of money. So you're looking around the linebackers. I mean, Mac Wilson and Taki also have issues, but they're getting thrown in the coverage. So you also wonder, is this on Joe Woods' defense? But it's incredibly concerning. And like you said, and we brought up, you give up 34 points to the Bengals. Joe Burrow was unstoppable, really, except when Myles Garrett was hitting him. So, I mean, it's definitely a concern moving forward. And it's all new territory. The Browns are scoring 30 points a game, so it's kind of weird for us to break this down with this team after all these years too.
100%. I had joked with some friends before this game that, okay, if Burrow throws even close to 61 times like he did in the first meeting of these two teams, he's going to have a long afternoon. He threw the ball 47 times today, 406 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. And I would have said, okay, if he's throwing that amount with that high level of frequency, that the Browns would have a huge lead against Cincinnati, and that did not happen today. And so that is a concern of mine. Also a concern of mine, the Browns need Nick Chubb back, and they need Wyatt Teller back on the offensive line. Only 82 yards rushing on the ground today. And look, I understand that you've got to win in different ways in this league, no doubt about that. But the Browns' strength when they've played at their best this season has been when they've been able to effectively run the football and control the line of scrimmage. They haven't done that in the last several weeks.
No, not having Nick Chubb is huge. And I think that's lost among some people out there. I mean, today at some points, or for about one drive, it looked like Jarvis Landry was the number 2 running back. He was getting end arounds and, those gadget plays. And Kareem Hunt is a top tier running back, but Nick Chubb is on I think a whole different level, and him not being there, I mean, it just changes the whole defensive game plan, changes what the Browns can do with play action and everything. So, I mean, it's amazing to me that they could put up 37 points without Nick Chubb. Totally changes the game plan, and Wyatt Teller being out too. It's stuff like that where you really have to watch, I guess, breakdowns to see it, or be paying attention. But it just goes back to any Mayfield hates. It's just ignoring the actual problems out there.
100%. And before that last drive, we got to give a shout out to Rashard Higgins as well, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, who had what was the game-winning score for the Browns. Both guys, young receivers. Peoples-Jones is a rookie, stepping up with OBJ's absence. And OBJ will have an MRI on that knee tomorrow. I'm checking that on Twitter right now. So obviously the Browns want him back, but I'm almost surprised Mayfield played as well as he did without his star receiver. And I've always said this, and Browns fans know this also well, that Mayfield has a better rapport with Jarvis Landry. There's no doubt about that. And the numbers that I always look at with OBJ is that catch percentage of, okay, how many times he's targeted. It's not just the receptions that he has, but how many receptions does he have compared to how many targets he has. And sometimes it's a ball Mayfield might throw that's not catchable, but for whatever reason, Mayfield and OBJ just haven't had that rapport. And so when you see him go off this afternoon for 21 consecutive completions, it's good to see the young guys get involved. At the same time, I'm kind of scratching my head and saying, well, why can't this happen with your star receiver who's making on average $18 million a year in OBJ? And it's kind of incredible to me to see Mayfield do as well as he did in the afternoon and flip the script after a slow start without OBJ. And this is again, we get into some of the real problems with this team. That is clearly one of them, is for whatever reason, Mayfield and Beckham just haven't gotten on the same page.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, Mayfield looks like he has better rapport with David Njoku, who's actively trying to be traded. Like, he caught his touchdown and looked mad that he, had success. And it's like, I've always defended OBJ. I like, I like him. He's gets a lot of hate that he doesn't deserve, I think, because he was in New York in such a big, media market. But it's just Baker has better chemistry with everyone else. And when Beckham's out there, it's like he's forcing the ball to him. Beckham goes out of the game. I mean, Peoples-Jones, they mentioned on the broadcast, he was just, he's returning kicks and blocking. And then he's making these toe-tapping game-winning receptions. Like, we don't see Odell Beckham doing that for the Browns. And it kind of stinks, but it seems like their offense moves much more efficiently if Baker is not just staring down OBJ. And I mean, every receiver who caught a pass today had at least 2 receptions.
And look, I'm going to put that with the caveat of not counting the Dallas game. There have been a few OBJ games that have been impressive. And that Dallas game, he really broke out and helped secure the victory for the Browns. But here's what I'm talking about, right? You look at Rashard Higgins' stats today, 6 receptions, 110 yards on 6 targets. He caught all 6 of his targets. Harrison Bryant, 4 receptions, 56 yards, 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 3 receptions, 56 yards, the game-winning score on 3 targets. So again, it goes back to how efficient are you when you're actually targeting and throwing to your receiver? And again, for whatever reason, Mayfield just has not had that with OBJ. And again, you go back to, if you would have told me today that Mayfield would have started out 0-5, and again, I go back to every NFL team scripts their first 10, 15, 20 plays. And so you know what you're going to run. Generally, you know what the opposing defense is going to run based on your scouting and game planning for the week. He starts out 0-5, and it's like, here we go again. Should the Browns actually bring in Case Keenum? And then he flips the script, but I don't know what they figured out, if there was something that they noticed on the tablets on the sidelines with the film, something that the Bengals were doing or not doing, because then all of a sudden it was almost as if it was a 7-on-7 drill. And again, look, the Bengals defense has a lot of problems. This is a Cincinnati team that's going to struggle, even despite how incredible Joe Burrow is this season. But there's a reason why they had the number 1 overall pick to get Joe Burrow, because this defense isn't that good. That being said, to complete 21 consecutive passes in any NFL game, it's not like 7-on-7 where you don't have any linemen coming after you. Even on that final drive, I thought one of the key plays in today's game was, I believe it was the first pass that Mayfield completed where it looked like he was going to be sacked. We know how much Mayfield struggled against the pressure. He somehow escaped the pressure, and I believe he completed it downfield. I believe it was to Higgins, and it got the Browns the first down. He goes down and gets sacked on that play. Are we talking about a different outcome in this game? I thought that was a huge play for the Browns late in the fourth quarter.
No, I agree with that. That's definitely a play that stood out to me, because this season, I guess even last season too, Baker probably would have been sacked on that play 9 out of 10 times, but then he makes the connection with Higgins, which is another interesting part of this, because is that happening if the 2 receivers out there are Landry and Beckham? So
that's a great question. That's a great question.
So it's a good problem to have at 5-2, having too much talent. I think having too much talent was the goal of the 2016 rebuild, and it took a while, obviously. But I mean, making that play is such an anti-Browns play since 1999, and it's just odd to talk about. But I know exactly what you're talking about, because I'm sure a lot of Browns fans, right when that happened, were like, I can't believe he made that throw and catch.
Let's go to good call, bad call, and I'll start with the good call. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, any gadget play where Jarvis Landry gets the throw, like, are we sure he's not the team's 3rd-string quarterback? Like, that dude can sling it. But the end-round gadget play where he completed a pass downfield to Donovan Peoples-Jones, like, as a lefty, and it's unfortunate he's thrown as much as he has this season, because I feel like a lot of teams now know that Jarvis Landry is a lefty. But what a weapon that can be on trick plays and gadget plays for the Browns. That was my good call.
No, that was an amazing play. He's moving out of bounds, completes it to Peoples-Jones, and that was really the first time we got to see what Peoples-Jones can do. So that was a nice little teaser for the end of the game. My only concern with your good call of the game was the fact that both Baker and Landry have cracked ribs, and Baker gave the little chip block, took a shot in the ribs, and then Landry also took a shot in the ribs on the same play. And I was like, oh, it was like the opening play or interception where there's a pick, people are laying on the field. I had some concern, but everyone was okay, so it definitely stands out as a good one.
Look, I don't wish ill will on any player, but just to make it universal across the board, I feel like almost like Case Keenum needs a cracked rib as well, just to make it all 3 across the board with that. But I'm only joking around when I say that. I do want to get into the bad call, though, too. And on that first drive when the Browns intercepted Joe Burrow, and Goodson, the linebacker, is trying to return the interception. It's the opening drive of the game. Like, he's more of a thumper, and what I mean by that is Goodson's a linebacker who can make the big hit, but he's not known for his speed. Take the touchback in that situation because the Browns get the ball with bad field position on offense. It's great you stop the Bengals score, no doubt. But even before Mayfield's interception, which he's thrown an interception on the first 2 throws of his last 2 games, your back's up against the wall because you have horrible field position. Just go down in the end zone, understand the situation. I understand your adrenaline's rushing. He's probably thinking, oh man, maybe I can get a great return. Maybe I can score. But I would have liked to see him just kind of take a knee there and the Browns get better field position. Just under the situational awareness is just something as your team gets better and better. And certainly the Browns are. They're 5-2. You just got to know what the situation is. And that was a situation where I thought could have been very costly to Cleveland in this one.
I openly yelled at my TV after that play. I was like, just take a knee. But they showed the replay, and all the Browns defenders are pointing for him to run. So it's, if he catches it and you got 3 guys telling him to take a knee, but everyone's pointing from the run, and it's right away, I'm like, we just turned a huge positive into a potential negative. And I mean, luckily they won the game, but like you said, it's that situational awareness. And it's not like, it's a team of all rookies on defense. There's just got to be a better sense to not make a huge play. But I guess a positive is that they didn't go crazy and try to pitch the ball or anything. So at least kept to the turnover and, protected the ball after that point.
Again, 2 plays I think could have really cost the Browns in this one, if not for Mayfield's game-winning drive, was Terrence Mitchell's dropped interception, and then that Joe Burrow scramble on 3rd and 11 with about 2 minutes left in the 4th quarter. With the dropped interception, you've got to take advantage of the opportunities when they're presented because a good team will make you pay. And then with the 3rd and 11 scramble, I think that was probably more scheme than anything with the Browns because it looked like they were in man-to-man. They didn't have any linebackers underneath, and other than the pass rushers, Joe Burrow got by that, and he had an open lane, and he took off and run. It was almost as if it was a designed running play. I know it wasn't, but I think Burrow just recognized the coverage pre-snap and took off and ran and got the first down. 3rd down and 11, that's where Myles Garrett needs to eat. That's where these other defensive linemen, whether it's Olivier Vernon or Sheldon Richardson or Larry Ogunjobi, they have to think to themselves, okay, we know the other team's likely going to pass in this situation. Let's have a race to the quarterback. That's where I'd like to see the Browns have more of a killer instinct. And also, if you want to look at it from a scheme standpoint, if you are Joe Woods, maybe you rush more than 3 or 4 guys. Maybe you bring the house and you bring the blitz on a play like that. But just to see and to give a rookie quarterback that easy of a first down in that situation when the Bengals needed a touchdown, I believe at that point they were down 4. You just got to have go back to situational awareness. And I'm actually going to put that one on the coaches because Burrow saw something from a scheme standpoint, took off, ran, and got the first down. Eventually the Bengals go down and score on that drive. And thankfully for the Browns, it did not cost them. But for a rookie quarterback in that situation, make him make the throw. That's what I would have liked to see from Cleveland's standpoint.
No, it was incredibly frustrating. And I get tired, as a Browns fan when you're watching the game and the announcer says something like the broadcaster goes, got to protect the middle of the field. And then Burrow just runs right up the middle. And it's like, if someone's making that offhanded comment, a NFL quarterback is going to see it within seconds. Like Joe Burrow's incredibly intelligent. He's the number 1 pick and he's proven he can run the ball and you just totally clear out. So it makes no sense. And like you said, there's got to be some scheme changes in situations like that. And plug up the middle of the field, have one of the other defensive linemen, because if you're lining Myles Garrett up, sometimes they do, several feet outside of the tackle. You're just opening up a hole right through the middle.
Yeah.
And it just makes no sense.
It was Sparrow Dides and Adam Archuleta on the call for CBS this afternoon. The guy who's so great at that as an announcer is Tony Romo for CBS. And that's why he's one of the highest paid analysts in the NFL, to where he's calling out what's going to happen before it happens. So if an announcer can do that, and look, Adam Archuleta, former NFL player, Tony Romo, former quarterback. But if a guy from the booth who, knows the X's and O's, but doesn't know the specific X and O's can point that out, there's no question that a team like a guy like Joe Burrow or whoever your opposing quarterback that you're actually going up against is going to recognize that in that scenario. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, it's fun when it's not against your team. I'd say I love Tony Romo's calling stuff out, but he'll do it for Browns games too when they're losing. And it's like there's like we've said earlier, there's just some situational awareness that needs to be cleaned up. But it's 7 games into the season, and I guess after you win, you can build upon or improve the negatives you saw without it totally collapsing the season. Like that play, luckily, didn't send them to 4-3, and then they have very low confidence going the next game. So something to build upon. Hopefully, they correct it right away.
Steven, that was something I wanted to ask you about, is what was going through your mind on the Bengals' last score when Burrow completed that pass? I believe it was to Giovanni Bernard on that play action pass. Like, what was going through your mind? And then it's like, okay, from my standpoint, I'm thinking it's like 1:06 left. You could potentially come back, but you're putting your offense in a horrible situation considering you don't have any timeouts. And Mayfield gets the ball back. He starts completing some passes, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe they can get it in field goal range for Parkey to send it into overtime. And then it was like the next thing you know, the Browns score a touchdown to take the lead for good. But what was going through your mind when Burrow completed his touchdown pass to Giovanni Bernard with 1:06 left in this game?
Yeah, there was 2 things. The first was when the play was happening, as soon as Bernard shot through in motion to the right of the line, no one really reacted fast enough. And of course, Sendejo was the one who showed up late. So he just takes a lot of heat. But I think they were really, really expecting a Joe Burrow sneak. So they score. And then, unfortunately, the first thing I thought, I was like, oh no, I don't want another Cody Parkey double doink. Like, that was my initial fear, was like, please don't leave it to the kicker, because who ended up eventually missing a kick in the game. But I was just scared that they were going to play it safe and kind of, go 5-10 yards at a time. And then, well, like you said, he just comes out firing, and he's given us, or Baker Mayfield has given us no confidence really this year that he's capable of doing that. And, he looked good for 2.5 quarters. There's still some doubt, but I mean, I was definitely in shock during that drive in a good way.
Yeah, and of course, Cody Parkey misses the extra point, and the cynical side of me is thinking, oh man, this 3-point deficit, are the Bengals going to go down and get a game-tying field goal, then to send this game into overtime at 37-37? Bengals had a nice return, but by that point, it was like Burrow just had to chuck one long to see what would happen. Didn't have enough time to maybe complete a pass down the field and then try to line up and get a field goal. There just wasn't enough time at that point. But, you mentioned the double doink, Parkey's field goal in the Bears-Eagles playoff game from a few years ago. I don't know if you saw yesterday in college football, the Rice kicker had a quadruple doink yesterday. And so, look, Cody Parkey's no stranger to that, but he's kicked pretty well for the Browns thus far this season. But again, he missed that extra point at the end. Hopefully that doesn't become a trend for Cleveland.
Well, one thing about that extra point, because a friend who lives out west where you can sports bet texted me, that missed kick ruined the Browns on the spread. So at certain books, I believe the Browns were 3.5-point favorites. And so Cody Parkey comes up and just misses the kick. And, Browns fans go, oh, we're still winning. It's okay. But of course, a Cody Parkey kick has huge ramifications for certain people who may have laid a ton of money on the Browns.
You're spot on about that. A lot of lines had the Browns favored by 3.5 headed into this one. So if you gambled on the Browns to cover in this one, a brutal beat. That's You talk about something that should probably be money in the bank. You're probably going nuts after the Donovan Peoples-Jones score. I would love to see if there are any reaction videos on Twitter or maybe Instagram of a fan who had gambled on the Browns. That's a good call. That's a good call.
Yeah, it's stuff you don't even think about, but a lot of people are thinking about it. And one thing about that final drive too, I thought there should have been a delay of game call on the defense. There was a point when Higgins got a big catch, and it took him like 17 seconds to give the ball back to Baker to spike it because a defender hit the ball out of Higgins's hands. And I thought it could have ended up being something that was talked about after the game. Luckily they scored, but it wasted a lot of time, and you obviously can't do that. So I was kind of curious why there was no call from the refs there, but something that may not even show up on, Twitter reaction or anything because it didn't end up mattering.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and watch. I know there was one play where one of the Browns receivers, it might have been Higgins, caught the pass, and he was trying to give it to one of his teammates after the reception. At first I'm like, did they not rule him down? What is he doing? What's going on here? And it was almost, you could tell the Browns wanted to get back to the line to line up and run another play because they didn't have any timeouts left. I know several weeks ago, there was a play very similar in an Arizona Cardinals game where Larry Fitzgerald either caught the pass or one of his teammates did, and he ran the ball to the center of the field to give it to the ref so his team could line up and they could stop the clock and spike it. I know, look, at the end of the day, time is of the essence for the Browns with 1 minute and 6 left and no timeouts. And so that was something where if I could rewatch, that would be something I looked at. But something I noticed of what's going on because I thought the play's already over, but you can understand it from the Bengals standpoint, trying to milk as much clock as they can from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, it's one of those plays that if it did hurt the Browns, then it would just go down in lore. Like I was at the game in the past when Terrell Pryor got a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that shouldn't have been called. This is several years ago. So the Browns winning allows us, it seems to, for me to mention it, but it's not something that we really have to focus on because luckily it worked out. But it's something in the moment to me as a lifelong Browns fan that I'm like, oh, this better not be the talking point after the game if they can't even get the ball back to the line, to spike it and have enough time left.
Absolutely. And it was that spike that ended Baker Mayfield's consecutive completion franchise record now. Again, 21 straight. I'm just looking at Twitter to see if there's anything else we need to get to, Steven. And with OBJ, there is concern that his knee injury is considered a major knee injury. And so your heart goes out to him because he was trying to hustle after the defender who had made the interception. He was trying to make a tackle after a bad throw by Baker Mayfield. And so if he's out for the foreseeable future, that's a huge hit for this Browns offense. That's, again, already without Nick Chubb. Austin Hooper wasn't out there today. Wyatt Teller wasn't out there today. But again, we've seen what Mayfield can do with some of these young guys. Maybe today was the start of building more of a rapport with some of the younger receivers, and something that a lot of Browns fans have wanted to see with Mayfield and OBJ. But at the end of the day, I look at the contract and you're paying him $18 million a year. He's got to go out and produce. But we've seen what he can do in flashes, what he can do in open space. I think if not for OBJ's efforts in the Dallas game, the Browns don't win that one either. But look, 2020 has been a wild year, but the Browns 5-2. And I'm on the record as saying these two things as how it relates to the rest of the AFC North. I think the Browns, the Steelers, and the Ravens all get into the postseason in 2020 with the NFL's expanded playoff format. And I'm also on the record saying this. I believe the AFC North is the best division in all of the NFL because if I'm an opposing quarterback, I don't want to go up against the Browns because I know I'm going to have to deal with Myles Garrett. I don't want to go up against the Steelers defense, who, in my opinion, have the best front seven in the NFL. And we know what the Ravens can do. We know what the Ravens can do with Lamar Jackson and how scary they were a season ago when they went 14-2. And so even to be in that conversation, I know things didn't go well for the Browns against the Steelers and the Ravens, but you've got to win the games where you're favored and that you're supposed to. And they did that this afternoon in the Battle of Ohio in the win over the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I'm fully on board thinking they're going to get to the playoffs. maybe even getting the 6 seed and not even the 7 seed. You look at their schedule, and you don't want to go too deep into it, but they do have back-to-back games near the end of the season against the Jets and the Giants. And I mean, at that point, the Jets could be winless. The Giants are just a tiny bit better. Thursday night, you got Daniel Jones. He's just tumbling over head over heels. So the Browns minimum should have 7 wins, and those games aren't till late December. So between now and then, there's no reason why, even if worst case scenario, they go 0-4 against the Steelers and the Ravens, they should still be a 9-10 win team. And that's fine, because if they can't beat those teams yet and they still get into the playoffs, we know they're good enough to be in the playoffs, but maybe just need to jump up a tier in talent or production, and a win in the playoffs could do that. But getting ahead of myself, but everyone should be positive right now.
At that point in the season, the Jets might already be printing the Trevor Lawrence jerseys in the Tanking for Trevor sweepstakes. We'll see there. Next weekend, the Browns host the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm really curious to see what the Raiders do this afternoon against the Bucs. Remember, this is a Raiders team that beat the Chiefs earlier this season, so I'm really intrigued by this matchup. The Browns will be at home at First Energy Stadium next Sunday for that one, but I'm really excited to see how this Browns team goes up against John Gruden and the Raiders. I can't wait for that one.
That's going to be kind of the Browns' first real legitimate non-rival test, which will be nice because, Steelers and Ravens, there's, a lot more familiarity there from, them coming in and destroying the Browns. But you get the Raiders, a team now playing them often. Like you said, they boat raced the Chiefs. It was 40-32. They beat the Saints, beat the Panthers. Today they're, going up against Tom Brady and the Bucs, but there's no reason why the Browns can't, I'd even say, handily beat them. Their defense has given up a ton of points. The Browns have shown they can put up minimum 30 points a game if they don't get into, against Pittsburgh, a disaster start. So hopefully, because I said this before the Pittsburgh game, hopefully it's a competitive game, but I think it should be. There's no reason why it should be another 38-6, just terrible game.
100%. I'm with you there in the sense that this could be the Browns' first real test outside of the division because, Washington, the NFC East is trash this year. So the same could be said about the Cowboys in a game where the Browns led for the vast majority of the game, didn't really get crazy until the end. The Colts have a nice defense, but Phillip Rivers is going to hamstring that team in the long run, given his age. And that doesn't take away from anything that he's accomplished in his career as a quarterback. And then other than that, you've got your division opponents. And look, the Bengals might not be very good, but I always think the division games are a little bit tougher to win because those are opponents you see at least twice a year, sometimes 3 if you see a division opponent again in the playoffs. But credit the Browns for finding a way to win in this one. Credit Baker Mayfield starting out 0-for-5 and then turning it around in this one. Credit the Browns for finding a way to win against Joe Burrow in a game where Burrow threw for more than 300 yards in this one. That's his 5th game doing that. And the only quarterback in NFL history to do that other than Burrow as a rookie is Andrew Luck. Credit Joe Burrow, too, for keeping the Bengals in this game without 2 of his top – I forget how many offensive linemen eventually got injured in this one, and obviously without Joe Mixon. Joe Burrow is going to be a force for the Bengals for a long, long time. And at the end of the day, Baker Mayfield outplayed him this afternoon. And I don't think there's anyone out there that would say, okay, I would take Mayfield over Burrow in the long term. But again, you've got to see what you've got in Baker Mayfield because we need to see a large sample size to determine is he worth that 5th-year option or not? Because if he's not, what is your option moving forward if Mayfield's not the guy? And I can tell you, if you bring Case Keenum in, you're going to, again, you talk about having a lower ceiling for what your team can do. I'm not saying you can't win football games. I'm not saying you can't make the playoffs with either of those guys. But you have to figure that out. There are only a handful of blue chip quarterbacks in this league, and I feel like a lot of people are so obsessed with quarterback play because fantasy football and they see what guys like Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson do, there are other ways to win football games in the NFL. And that was evident today with how Mayfield played, but also how the Browns have won to this point in this season, and that's running the ball. That's something that I would like to see the Browns do against the Raiders next weekend, is reestablish their dominance in the ground game and their dominance at controlling the line of scrimmage, because when they can do that, they can control the clock, they can control the pace of the game, they can keep their defense off the field. And that, to me, is, in my opinion, when the Browns have been best thus far in 2020.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially with the run game. That's the strength of this team. And like you said, every team doesn't have an elite quarterback. But is Case Keenum going to throw 5 touchdowns and not throw an incompletion after a rough start? Most likely not. He's most likely not going to complete the pass where Baker was almost taken down, the one we talked about earlier, where, getting into Higgins after avoiding a sack. So you have Baker. I mean, you can criticize every incompletion for every single quarterback, but it's pointless. No one's perfect. Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. Same with Russell Wilson. So if Baker's getting 5 touchdown passes, there's not much better play you're going to get. And the interception was bad. That's fair to say, but he bounced back from it. He's shown plenty of confidence. And once again, they have to pound the run more. So if they can do that, I mean, they're sitting pretty with Baker. It's just as usual, just hyper focus on his play, which I do get after so many years of, bad quarterbacks. But there should be no panicking right now or immediately declaring he doesn't deserve that option.
And I'm going to leave you with this too, Steven, and we'll go ahead and sign off here in just a second. But Case Keenum's not making up 30-plus point deficits to Baltimore in week 1 and a week ago against the Steelers last Sunday, and your losses to your 2 AFC North Division rivals. Case Keenum is not making up that deficit. He's not the difference between a win and a loss in those games. He's just not. And so you're sitting good. Like, here's the way I look at it, right? Sitting at 5-2 headed into this Raiders game. I think every Browns fan out there would have signed up for this at the start of the season, especially with the first-year head coach in Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, 5-2, and even if they lose, 5-3 at the bye is, I mean, obvious math. You're on pace to go 10-6, but it's such a change. Most bye weeks for the Browns in the past 20-plus years have been just like a relief to get away from all the losing that we've seen and the bad play. But complaining at this point is, I don't know if it's like a performance art or something by some fans, but 5-2 is better than I think anyone could have asked for.
Steven, final thoughts before signing off here. Again, the Browns a 37-34 winner in round 2 of the Battle of Ohio, but I just wanted to get any final thoughts before signing off.
My final thought is going with what you said, that Case Keenum is not making up those big losses against the Steelers and the Ravens. It's other problems on this team. Baker's doing just fine. He's playing well above average. So I think moving forward into the Raiders game, if you're going to focus on things to criticize the team, let's look at the problems on defense. Let's look at running the ball more. The negative Baker story, I'd say, should be gone for the week.
100%. And my key to the game against the Raiders, stopping Josh Jacobs in the running game. That's something I want to see shored up. It's going to be awfully hard for the Browns to win games if they're giving up 30-plus points like they did this afternoon, but rescued by the likes of Baker Mayfield and the rookie, Donovan Peoples-Jones. For Steven Kubitza, I'm Mark Bergin. Thank you for listening to the Browns Nation Station. Go leave us a 5-star review. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll see you next week after the Browns and Raiders game. Take care, and so long, everybody.